Today I'm going to show you how to set up a DaVinci Resolve project file and all the different frame rates, resolutions, audio sample rates, color depth, and all the other stuff you need to know to get started editing in DaVinci Resolve. So let's hop right into it. Alright, so here we have the menu. We're just going to create a new project and we'll just call this test 1 since that's what this is, just like that. Now we're going to hit create. Now automatically it'll just give us this just blank canvas to work with. Now what we're going to do is go into the settings and we're just going to set the resolution to 4K. That's 2160 by 3840. In this menu, it actually is the other way around, so 3840 by 2160, but a lot of people reference it the other way. Anyway, that's 4K. And if you want to do vertical content, say you're making a short form content or something like that, you can just hit select use vertical resolution like that, and it'll swap it around to be vertical instead of horizontal. We're gonna stay with horizontal for now though. So anyway, there we have. And then our frame rate, we can select right here. Now, the thing with the frame rate, you can change your resolution afterwards, but you can't really change your frame rate. You can based on the different projects, but you want to keep it all the same. So personally, I use 29.97. If you shoot at 24 or 23.976 or 50 frames a second or 60 frames a second or anything like that, this is where you change it now at the beginning. Now, different projects, you can change that, but overall for this project file, you want it to basically stay the same. So we're just going to select 29.97. Now, below that for video monitoring and optimized media and all that kind of stuff, you can change that as well. I would recommend that if you're going to be needing a lot of heavy workloads and stuff like that, that you would change your optimized media to ProRes 422 LT and your render cache to ProRes 422 LT. You can use the higher formats like ProRes 422 HQ or 4444, but those are going to be massive files. So if you change it to LT, the render files are going to be a lot smaller to work with. And that doesn't change the output video. It's just for rendering it when you're viewing it. Say for example, if you have a bunch of effects on something, you need to render it to be able to see what's happening, that's what that's gonna be. Again, this does not affect your output render, just your optimized media. And you can do the same thing with proxy media, say 422 LT. You can change that to be even lower quality or higher quality, it just depends on your computer and your storage and whatnot. But that's what I recommend for most systems, especially if you're on a Mac. Okay, now we're going to go to the next menu. For our purposes, that's going to be color management. I set this to DaVinci YRGB. This gives you a huge range of colors and it's compatible with basically every format. You're going to want to set your timeline color space to P3 DCI. And there's a bunch of different options available, but that's what you're going to want to use. And your output color space to sRGB. Now this is super important to get right. You want to change it here in your timeline, but you also want to change it in your export settings. If it's not the same in each menu, well, it'll be weird. For example, I used to have it set improperly and it would be super desaturated and I'd have to oversaturate on my timeline for it to look right. And you don't want to do that. You want to be what you see in your timeline to be the same as your exported video. So make sure that these are set properly. Now you can change these to be different if you want to do HDR workflows or different color spaces, but for general use for short form content, for videos like this, you're gonna want to have these settings. It works the best that way. Okay, now we're gonna move on to audio and then we're pretty much gonna be done with this segment of it. So we're gonna go down to Fairlight and you can set your sample rate to 48 kilohertz. Now, sometimes you might want that to be higher. For example, in this video, I'm recording it at 96 kilohertz. So if I wanted to take advantage of that, I would just go down here, change it to 96 kilohertz. 48 kilohertz is the standard for video media. 44.1 is for audio for maybe a CD or music production. And you can go higher up to 192 kilohertz, but make sure that this is the same as your recording, because if you record at 48 kilohertz and you raise it up to 192 kilohertz, there isn't going to be any advantage there. You're just going to be running the same sample 4 times. It's like frame rates. If you set your timeline to 60 frames a second, but you only record at 30, it's just going to play the same thing twice. So it's not really useful. So generally I like to keep it at 48, but you can change it here if you want to do that. Now take in mind, this is just like frame rates because it's a timing thing. You can't change this after the fact, so make sure to get it right the first time. So I'm just going to set mine at 96 kilohertz because that's what I personally use, but it depends on the project. Okay, we're going to be done here for now. We're going to hit save and it'll save to all of our project. There we go. Now we're going to create the actual project we can edit off of. So we're just going to right click on here, create new timeline. And if we want to use the same settings that we just set up, we can just hit create and be done with it. But for example, if you're making a normal video and then you're making short form, this is where you change that. So your project settings is what it wants to use by default, but we can just unclick this and we can change a lot of the settings we just changed. So for example, if you're want to change this specific timeline to be vertical, you could do that here. If you wanted to change this specific timeline to be a different frame rate, you could do that here. And this doesn't affect your other timelines. For now though, we're just gonna keep it with use project settings. This is also the place that you would change your audio track type. So if you wanted to be in 5.1 or something like that for surround, you could do that here as well as in the project settings. But for most situations, I would just stick with stereo or even mono, really. Especially for dialogue, mono is just fine, but stereo is great if you're having music. So we're just gonna stick with stereo. Okay, create, and now we have a timeline. Now we can drag our media just straight from our file viewer or finder straight into here and start playing back immediately. Also, we can add all of our titles and effects and all that other stuff, which I've gone into in previous videos. If you want to check that out, there should be some on the channel or linked below. So yeah, here's where you do all your editing. You got your inspector up in this window, all that stuff. Now, as far as delivering, we're gonna touch on the delivering settings just because it's kind of related to your project settings. So we're gonna go down to deliver, and this is the same sort of scenario. So we're gonna go to codec, and we're just gonna change this to H.265 for the most part. You could do Apple ProRes or other formats, but generally speaking, H.265 or HEVC is the same thing. That works the best. And then you're going to want to check that your resolution is the same that your timeline is, that you want it to be. So it already is all over here. So, you know, 3840 by 2160, it's gonna be 30 frames a second. This is all good. We're just gonna wanna double check that our color is the same. So to do that, go to color space tag, make sure that it is PCI D3, or P3 DCI, I should say, and then the gamma tag is sRGB. Just like, where is it? It's at the bottom, there it is. Okay, sRGB, and whatever you do on your timeline and in color is going to translate perfectly to your export. Now for audio, I do like to change things a little bit differently. I'll change this to IEEE float, which is 32-bit float. What I found as far as audio goes, this might not be the best way to do it, but it's worked really well for YouTube, is that you mix to be just under peaking, and then you mix to 32-bit float, and then YouTube will just bring down whatever is the highest amount just below the limit so it doesn't peak anywhere. That's the best way to do it, so you have pretty loud audio, but it's not too loud, and it doesn't peak anywhere. So that's how to do that. And then your sample rate will be the same as project. You don't have to change that unless you want to, but it could cause issues. So anyway, that's how you do all that stuff. If you want to export it, and after you've done all this, you can just add your file name and your location, add to render quota down here, and then you would have to hit render all, or just select one project and render it. And that is how to go through all your different settings for timeline and export and all that stuff you need to know with starting off with DaVinci Resolve. Now there's a ton of stuff you can do with this. You can do HDR, you can do Dolby Vision, you can do Dolby Atmos, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff, but for the most part, for videos like this, that's what you need to know. If you have any further questions, let me know in the comment sections down below. I'm gonna try to make more of these types of tutorials for DaVinci Resolve and maybe Lightroom as well, since they're fun to make and you guys seem to enjoy them. That's gonna be about it for this video, but before we go, I wanna tell you about our sponsor, Motion Array. If you're a content creator like myself and wanna level up your videos, check out Motion Array. With pre-made templates, transitions, audio effects, and even plugins, Motion Array is the place to go. They even have music, sound effects, and footage as well. They've basically got everything you need to make your videos look better. To get $50 off your annual subscription, check out the link below. Thank you to Motion Array for sponsoring the channel, and back to the video. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. If you want to watch another video, you can check out the channel, and if you want to follow me on social media, that's awesome too. That's it, and I'll see you in the next video.